This is Infection, the survival podcast, recorded live on Tuesday, May the 24th, 2022, episode 384. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can check me out at various places by visiting my website, nickcraig.com or nickcraig.net. You can also give me a follow over on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig. And of course, check out our illustrious website, infectionpodcast.com. Speaking of illustrious, can't do this thing alone. I've got my illustrious co-host beside me, Brian, with a fixed camera, Aldridge.
Yes.
Hello, Brian. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing well, and it's nice to actually have a camera that's not freaking out this week, so that'll work.
Well,
if you want to find me, get me at...
It's good this week. I'm sure next week there'll be some sort of tragedy.
Doing warranty returns.
Yeah, it's just...
I mean, I can only have so many camera issues in a row, so... if you want to find me, get me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, and all those. Boise Computer on Twitter, at Brian Aldridge. I think I finally got on Truth Social as well. So
look at you, hot stuff.
Yeah. So now that they opened up the web, you can find me there. If you want to check out my blog, biteoftech.com, and of course our website, infectionpodcast.com. And I encourage you to go to our Discord server. Maybe you want to play some ARC, or maybe you want to talk some politics, post some memes, just hang out and chat, whatever you'd like to do. We've got a lot of people there doing that, so you're welcome to come hang out. Also, if you want to check out the video forms of the podcast, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. And then to the lower right, we got all the audio forms. So we record those after the fact, but if whatever device you have, as soon as we upload it, you have the option of retrieving it right away. And if you are listening to the podcast, I really encourage you to follow the show notes, because we have episode notes for every episode we've done up until this point. And in there, we've got links, video links, articles, source material. So anything that we refer to throughout the show, we put links to that in there, and that helps you to follow along and maybe see a video that you can't quite see on the audio form of the podcast. If you want to support us, we do have the support option up top, or infectionpodcast.com/support, where there's plenty of ways to support us. And hopefully someday in this summer, maybe fall next summer. Well, it won't be this summer because I'll be dealing with a baby.
Yeah, we're going to Vegas. How's that? I thought we were going to Vegas.
I got to figure out how that. I got to figure out how that's going to work. Let's see. I just don't think she's going to want to leave the baby.
Well, she doesn't have to. What about you?
Anybody? We'll see. I'll talk. I'm not going to make that decision, but yeah, that is a possibility. But I'd rather.
I mean, it seems like a really good possibility to me. I mean, it's not real. I mean, it's not your baby. Well, I mean, it is, but it isn't.
Wait. It is my baby. Yes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you're not having any. I mean, Brian, I don't want to be offensive. I don't know if you're classified as a birthing person or one of these other stupid terms, but I don't believe that you are carrying the child unless.
My stint of carrying the child is very short, so.
Okay, yeah. So well, I mean, yeah,
I'm not waiting for it to be born.
Yeah, well, so then perfect. So all right, so yeah, Vegas this summer, fantastic. No, by the way, we haven't used any. Just clarification, we haven't used any of our Infection podcast buckaroos on any of those things. So have no fear. We'll consider those unsanctioned Infection podcast events that we do with those. We haven't spent any Infection buckaroos. We might though.
Yeah,
I mean, because at this point, it doesn't look like any of these conventions are going to come back. So,
I know. Who knows? Eventually, I just keep hoping that something will go back to normalcy, but we'll see. It might take a couple.
All right. You got a lot of stuff in here all over the place. Where do you want to start this Tuesday evening?
All right. Well, let's just kind of start taking down a path here. So let's talk about Apple is no longer the world's most valuable company, and this kind of came out here recently, and I figured, though they don't say in the head of the article, well, what is the most valuable company now? And it's actually a Saudi Arabia oil company.
Nice.
And I've been seeing a lot of things of Saudi Arabia buying esports teams, Saudi Arabia buying this, and there's another one we'll be talking about in a minute here. Saudi Arabia purchased a stake in Nintendo. So kind of like China. China's been doing this quite a bit, or has done this in the past quite a bit, of just purchasing companies, purchasing large percentage shares of companies. So now I would assume, of course, gas being so expensive, what's leading to this? Can't imagine how
Things
the high
things
gas prices leads to a Saudi Arabia oil company being the most valuable company on the planet. Not that they're spiking the prices or anything,
Yeah,
but
things that make you go,
here's where we are.
right? Well,
Yeah, it's kind of odd that that turned around so quickly.
yeah, well, speaking of Apple, Brian, I caught this story yesterday. This was kind of breaking. We've talked a lot about the very few companies that are left for acquisition in the gaming sphere. You've got essentially EA, we're talking large companies, EA, Ubisoft, and Rockstar. I'm sure there are some others that are smaller, but in terms of like large companies with big IPs, I can you think of anything besides those three right off the top? I mean, there's some other studios that are medium sized, but I think those are like the three juggernauts
not the
that are
big
left.
AAA, ones that put out a major title every year.
Yeah, and the reason that this is relevant to Apple is that Apple reportedly talked with Electronic Arts, aka EA, about a potential acquisition. EA has spoken to several potential individuals for this acquisition, including Apple, Amazon, and Disney. The last would be an unmitigated disaster. Amazon would make probably the most sense out of those three. If you're taking those three companies, with Amazon Gaming, and I know it has its problems and it continues to have its problems, but I'm not sure for Apple. I mean, I'm not sure that it makes a lot of sense for them. I mean, I guess in terms of, I don't know what luxury Apple is going to
Kind of
get
an odd, they're not the type of things you play on an Apple device.
Well,
I mean,
some
what
of them
Apple
are,
devices they provide?
Well,
maybe some, but they're major Dragon Age.
But I'm thinking the sports games, but those games already could have been on mobile. And the reason they weren't is not because EA was owned by itself. It's probably because there's just not a market for these games, a $60 title or something like that on phone.
I think it's kind of odd that The Sims hasn't turned into a mobile game. Why do they still have people playing The Sims on a PC?
Are people still actively Are people still playing The Sims on PC?
People playing Sims. Yeah, a lot of people play Sims. It's still, they're releasing tons of content packs. There's lots of stuff going on. Seems like they could turn that into a mobile game.
There is. It's called The Sim. It is. It's called The Sims Mobile.
Is it very does it have a lot of downloads?
Well, let's see. According to this, I don't know what it has. It has 500,000 reviews on the Apple App Store, so I guess somebody is playing it.
There we go. Because that's the kind of thing that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Sims games. There's The Sims. Yeah, there's The Sims Mobile. There's The Sims Free Play. There's SimCity Build It. Those are the three that are actual EA games. There's a bunch of knockoff, virtual simulation stores, but there are three. So that's my thing is any of these games that and Falcon Rain says I don't interact with people that play Sims. And neither do I, which I think is why Brian and I had no idea that those games are available on mobile.
I didn't realize it was on mobile.
But I don't think any of these games, obviously Dragon Age and Battlefield and Apex, no. But you could look at, there are already soccer games and football games and things like that are on iPhones and Androids. So for me, I don't really know here's the thing. When you acquire a company, when you're the size of Apple and you don't have a cash problem, you're acquiring a company for a reason. You're not just acquiring it because it's a quote unquote a good deal. You're acquiring it for something. And I don't know what the something would be for Apple. For Amazon, the something is it would add a whole bunch of staff and legitimacy to their Amazon game studios. Disney is a dumpster fire right now. I don't know why. I mean, you've seen what they've done with some of their other projects, like the Star Wars franchise, in which they've managed to screw that royally 6 ways from Sunday. I just found it very interesting. Disney apparently was the first pick for EA, and the gaming company actually approached Disney to try and have a more meaningful relationship. They also spoke with NBC Universal and were close to a deal, but that didn't work due to pricing and structure. So that is what we have That is kind of the update on that. So it appears that EA is shopping themselves out, which
What about like a streaming service? Do you think Apple's interested in doing a set-top box, kind of like what these other ones have been
they
talking
have a
about?
set.
Because
They have a set-top box.
but I'm saying but they have a set-top box they use for TV and media, but they haven't released something that has a strong online gaming piece to it. And I bet you they may be branding something that they can release where you can watch TV and you can play games on it. Because right now, what games do they have that
I'm
would
sure
look good
there's
on a big
some.
screen? But most of their stuff is mobile stuff, right? Or tablet stuff. It's not made for a TV. They have to bring something in that has TV games and start building a library for it.
Yeah, and but that was kind of my point. Is I'm not sure. Like Apple has been they have not put a lot behind the Apple TV. It went years between them releasing an update to the Apple TV. I mean, you're talking. It was like essentially Roku went from nobody having a device to everybody having a Roku between the time in which Apple released an update to their Apple television. So I'm not sure that they're super hell-bent on that platform. They haven't indicated that they are. I see your point. I
think they're feeling a little late to the game, probably.
Well, they're incredibly late to the game.
I think all of a sudden, people are all of a sudden saying, "Oh, this gaming is going to go to streaming," kind of like TV did. There was a quote out of one of the ex-Microsoft execs, and they claimed that they were worried that the Game Pass could hurt the industry. And I feel like that mindset is so close-minded. It's kind of like the people that said, if you get rid of all the rental stores and go to online streaming, it's going to kill the movie industry. Or going from CDs to MP3s and digital downloads, that's going to kill the music industry. It's going to hurt the artists. Remember Metallica?
Well, to be fair
about that, I just think it's short-sighted.
To be fair, the streaming has absolutely screwed over the artists in the music industry. Now, I will say I have no sympathy for the large groups, but for more of the indie people, nevertheless, I don't really know. And I agree, that is a very closed-minded thing, and the reason they're saying that is because it will hurt them. But
the people trying to compete, it's an ex-Microsoft exec saying this.
Yeah, and I mean, and in terms of traditional gaming, it will absolutely change it, and I think it already has. I mean, I'm trying to think the last game that I even bought, Brian.
What's the last movie you purchased?
I haven't purchased a movie in years.
Okay, exactly.
I went to see.
That's exactly where this is going. People aren't going to buy games anymore.
Yeah, I think the last movie I saw in theaters was The Many Saints of Newark, which was the Sopranos prequel. But that was, I think that was last year. That was like November or maybe October of last year. I haven't purchased a movie in years, and I think the last video game I purchased, honestly, outside of the most recent, it might be Cyberpunk, or the most recent Call of Duty. It's probably the most recent Call of Duty. I think those are the last two I've purchased.
See, I think Cyberpunk for me might be. There's probably something here or there I purchased. I can't remember.
But I have Game Pass, and I played a couple. I played Halo on Game Pass, so I have played recent games. I just haven't purchased them. I played Halo 5 on Game Pass.
Yeah, and I think that if anything, that would be the path for them. Like why Apple's buying or is interested in buying a game studio that's outside of their market, that's not mobile based, because people do game on Macs now because there are video cards that can handle some things, but you're not doing hardcore gaming on a Mac. It's not, you don't think of it as I'm going to play Call of Duty on a Mac. I'm going to play, I think people definitely do it, but there's a lot better ways to do it, especially if they go streaming and you're not getting a better experience out of having a better computer. I think that people are just going to go for these little boxes if it's the exact same experience.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. It appears very obvious to me that EA is going to be sold to somebody. I have a strong suspicion that Microsoft is not interested because I assume Microsoft would have jumped if EA was truly having these conversations with NBC Universal and Disney and Apple. I mean, Microsoft would have been part of the conversation. I'm sure EA wants way more than they're worth. To me, though, Sony needs to purchase EA. This would be and they need to overpay for it if they have to. They can't afford to allow EA to get bought up by somebody else. So Sony needs.
I wonder
to
if they're
bite the bullet and buy
regretting that
EA.
Bungie purchase a
No,
little bit now, because
I'm sure
that
they're
was a
not.
lot of money for a very limited catalog of games.
Yeah, but they had no choice because Microsoft was going to gobble it up, and this was them just trying to stop the bleeding. I mean, this was putting a Hello Kitty Band-Aid on a limb that you just cut off on a table saw. I mean, it looks good,
I know,
but it's not doing any good. And for them, it was just to stop the bleeding from. Oh my God, Microsoft is going to purchase every freaking company
but I think
that builds video
this
games.
would have been a much better purchase for them strategically.
I agree,
because people don't really care about Destiny because it's available everywhere.
True.
What exclusive?
You don't get the
you think they're really going to go exclusive?
No,
Yeah,
but I think
this is an ongoing version that they keep updating. They're not releasing new versions of Destiny very often.
But let me throw this at you. I could make the same argument about EA. Now, outside of a game like you mentioned Dragon Age and Battlefield. Mm-hmm. Battlefield is a cross-platform game. It's going to stay a cross-platform game. Dragon Age they could move that exclusive. I don't think it's got a big enough audience where saying, wow,
well, they're getting ready to release a new Dragon Age game here pretty soon. I assume that's being pretty close to not being exclusive to PlayStation at this time.
But even going forward, let's just say 5 years from now, the Dragon Age is not something that I think has the pull or the draw where it would be worth it.
It's a niche audience.
The sports games are staying multi-platform because they're very profitable. Mm-hmm. SimCity is already, let's not even talk about SimCity. Apex Legends is already available for free on multiple platforms. Mm-hmm. So it's not really doing, none of these companies that are available for Sony are going to give them the little golden nugget like Microsoft's got with Bethesda, with Fallout and Skyrim and whatever the new Starfield and some of that stuff. To me, this Sony needs to purchase them before somebody else does, because it's only going to fracture the industry. And then after that, it's Ubisoft, and I don't think Rockstar is going to sell. So I think Rockstar will be your last standing studio that's left, large studio. And here's the thing. But other companies will come up.
Would have to be a big failure for that to happen.
And even if GTA 6 is a big failure, I don't think that will matter. I mean, they've made so much money off of GTA 5. GTA 6 could be an absolute dumpster fire.
If people keep playing GTA Online and buying the shark cards, I don't think they're going to be too concerned about it.
No, and they are. So they're not going to be concerned. I read an article. Where was it? Let me see if I can find it. I saw it today. It was like the most played games. Yeah, here it is. An IGN article. The 10 most played games this year are mostly old favorites. So according to Player Pulse, which I guess did a survey of the games that are being played, the top 10 games, this is quarter one of 2022, which ended April 30th, or started March or May the 1st, whatever. I think that's when the quarter started. The top 10 games, this was console and PC. Minecraft, Grand Theft Auto 5, The Sims 4, which I guess people are playing The Sims. Fortnite, Among Us, Animal Crossing, Call of Duty Warzone, Madden NFL 22, Call of Duty Vanguard, and NBA 2K22. So 3 of those games are EA titles. Now, they're not new EA titles. The Sims 4 came out in 2014, but there have been a lot of expansions. Madden and NBA are new, but 3 of those titles are EA games. Obviously it's worth something, but they must just be trying to shop around. But isn't it interesting, Brian, that the top 5 games in this list, actually the top 6, the top 7 games were all released in 2020 or before.
Yeah. So there's not
only
been
3 games
in a breakout hit that's stuck.
All 3 games from 2021 are Madden, NBA, and Vanguard. Yeah. Everything else is 2020, and Minecraft is 2009, which makes sense. Yeah. That's always been a hot player. It's just one survey, so take that for what it's worth. But I think that that goes a little bit more into that. EA is definitely worth something. There's no question about it. Those DLCs they do for Sims are expensive. They're like $40 DLCs, and they sell a boatload of them. But I guess they just must be asking for too much. That's all I can grab. That's all I can think. Yeah,
and that's the thing, is if it were a reasonable price, Microsoft, they could purchase it. I assume they're not stretched. Sony, I just worry because their console sales are down. They don't have a lot of other methods of income that I know of. That's bringing like Microsoft does. Microsoft has their whole server infrastructure, the email systems, all the business features. Then they have games. Then they have the operating system where they do a lot of licensing of software. I mean, they have so much money coming in from all these different ways that's right now is booming. And they could toss out the money and not, I think, flinch as much as
But
most companies.
but I don't
So,
think they want
but
it.
if they've got to see. Yeah, I mean, for them, it just depends what the price is. I think because it
Well,
would be if you had them, and it's a top games that people are actively playing, and they could
it's
do probably more with it. I think than most other companies could.
it's the price, but it to me it also is logistics. I would assume, because I know
Yeah.
EA has got studios all over the damn world. I would assume EA is a very expensive company in terms of their costs. I would assume, and I'm not. Is EA publicly traded? I'm not sure.
So EA has over 20 studios with about over 6,000 creators. Or
Microsoft doesn't want any part of that.
developers. Yeah,
I mean, they really.
yeah, there'd be a
Microsoft doesn't
lot
want.
to track.
Microsoft doesn't. Yeah, what are they going to do? Fire three? What are they going to fire half the staff? I mean, they don't want studios in all of these countries. It's a logistics nightmare, which is I'm sure why Microsoft doesn't want it. The goal is you acquire a company, Brian, take the stuff that you want, and then work it into your current systems and things like that. Bethesda is not that big of a studio. It does not have 6,000 people working. It doesn't have 20 studios.
Yeah.
It probably had 2, maybe 3 studios at the most. Activision Blizzard, that's a different story, but Activision Blizzard is significantly more of a get than EA is, from my vantage point.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like all these studios they have, and they have a big section of mobile studios like Glue. Glue is part of them? PopCap. I mean, so that would make sense for Apple just because they have a lot of mobile games. So be interesting to see if they go for it.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. Now we wait.
Hey, let's move on to Microsoft here because
yeah, sure.
I told you Microsoft was talking about one of the execs were saying this is hurting the industry, but the CEO he was pitching the Xbox cloud gaming to developers over this past week, and he promises that there's no extra coding, and that's the thing
huge.
I think it's going to take because trying to get into maybe the PlayStation infrastructure it's much different. The hardware, the operating system, all that is much different than a computer. And I think they have a much tougher time getting people to develop for a PlayStation game because they've either made it for a PC and then they've transitioned it or they've made it for a specific console. It seems like until recently, it's been really hard to have games for small studios on both consoles. If they can get it to where they can offer cloud gaming, you don't have to do a bunch of work to get it to all work with their system. No extra coding, pretty much a plug and play type of system. That's going to attract a lot of these developers because a lot of these developers struggle with how do we get our game first to cloud gaming? How do we get it to where we can do maybe, to play on mobile devices? Well, cloud gaming is the perfect way to get it to play on multiple devices because you're just sending a screen. It doesn't matter what the hardware is, right? So I think that Microsoft is setting themselves up to be kind of a mobile gaming, but not with phones. Mobile gaming is just it's gaming done mobilely.
Yeah, and I think for them, you read the headline. It's no extra coding, and I would assume that the costs are relatively low for the developer, and then Microsoft grabs a piece of the pie as a rev split, kind of what like the Unreal Engine does. The free version of the Unreal Engine that you don't pay for it. I'm not saying that xCloud is not. I'm sure there will be some costs associated with it because it's running on servers and it's got an ongoing monthly cost, while the engine doesn't, at least in the same vantage point. So that is very interesting to see, and I just wonder what if any sort of traction they can get with this. I still think we're far. I still think we're a little whiles away from it. Still, We're not there
Yeah,
yet.
I think it's going to ramp up because it's going to take some time. I mean, look how long streaming really took to get flushed out to where everybody was doing it. You and I were doing it early. I mean, I was doing it really early. And
Trendsetters. What can I say?
yeah, and it's, we looked at it and said, well, this is so much easier. This is so much better. I think it's going to take time for people to get the devices to be able to do it. Because look how we went through the Chromecast, which ended up being just a big pile, right? You got the Fire Sticks, which didn't work well for a lot of lag. It took a while to get the hardware to where you had a device that you could sit there and just it worked. Built into TVs, or a device that your average person had. Almost everybody has something to stream on that works well now. They don't even think about it. It's either built in or whatever. You're going to get to the point where that's how gaming is. You're not thinking, oh, I got to go to the Apple, Play Store or Apple, store and download and purchase this game. You're just going to launch the app that has all your streaming games, kind of like Netflix, because that's what Netflix is for most people for TV. I think, we're getting there, but I think it's going to be a year or 2 or 3 before we get to where it's common. But I do definitely think in the next 3 years, it's going to be common. People, your average person will be streaming a game rather than playing it, I think, in 3 years. Well, right now, that's not the case. But they may be using the Game Pass, but they're not streaming the games.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I'm in the Game Pass that I've done. I've done the download on the on PC. It's not. I'm not streaming it. Partially. Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of reasons for that. I'm playing on a PC. Why would I stream it?
Yep.
But yeah, no. I think you're right. I just don't know and I guess if there really is no extra coding, it's going to come down to cost. Because I mean, especially for indie devs, right? I mean, how much are you willing to invest?
Giant games. I think the bigger thing is going to be giant games because some of these games are now 100 gigabytes.
I mean, Ark's been 220 something gigabytes for years now. I mean, the game's huge.
Yeah. So, I mean, you get these games where you can only have so many on a console because these consoles are giving you a terabyte hard drive. Enough 200 gigabyte games. You only can put 4 or 5 games on your console before it fills up. And I think that now that we have the Unreal Engine 5 with these super high resolution images, it's just going to make that even worse. Imagine getting your first super high resolution game. How are you going to download that? How's the average person going to download that? I don't think they will. They're not going to download a terabyte game. And we're coming up to that. If you get a giant game and it's offline, you could get a terabyte game if you had a huge world. What makes more sense is put it on a streaming device so that all the install is in the data center and the person's just getting the game trickled to them. And then you can have all these super high resolution graphics and scenes that just take huge amounts of space, but the person playing the game is not concerned with it anymore. Just like people, if they had to download 4K movies, before they watch them, they'd be like, man, these things are huge. But when they're streaming and trickling them in, they don't even think about it. Right. So I think that's what gaming is going to be, because that's going to be way worse, because the download is not just, an hour's worth of movie. It can be a month worth of content of gaming in a huge, giant open world.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
Now we were talking about Activision Blizzard. They have, they've said that their acquisition is moving very fast. So still looks like it's going to happen. They're working on it, but there's been some changes here recently at, for instance, Raven Software. They recently got a union, the first union in video games.
Yeah, good for them.
So yeah, so this is something that has happened.
It's a 23-person studio.
Yes, the vote was 19-3. I was figuring we're talking about maybe hundreds of people. No, it's there's 20-something people. 3 people said no, 19 said yes. I was looking at some articles kind of talking about some of the complaints. And of course, Kotaku, the pinnacle of wisdom and freedom, they were having their discussion talking about one of the biggest complaints was the breastfeeding stations they had there. I thought that was kind of odd. At Activision. So they have these places where women can go and like either feed their child or breast pump and things like that.
Do they have a daycare?
I guess, because the kids are there with them.
Yeah, I was saying, how the hell are you bringing your kid to work?
But the thing is, they also have to, even if the kid is at daycare, they still need to get the milk out of them, or else there'll be an issue. So they have these places where they can go and do this, and there's just a huge list of like the plugs in there weren't good, the table's wood, and people keep spilling milk all over it, and making the table discolored, and the outlets they're running out of jacks because everybody's trying to work from there while they're breast pumping the milk, and they have the machine hooked in, the computer hooked in because they were trying to work while they're doing it. Complaining there's someone complained that someone stole their breast milk out of the fridge. Things like this.
Hey,
So,
the old battle of whose name's on the coffee creamer. No, I give you whose
I
breast
hope that
milk am I
person
stealing?
realized that. I hope that person realized that it wasn't normal milk.
Well, I think
I
you'd
would
find out
assume it
pretty
was
quickly.
packaged differently enough.
Yeah, well, I assume
But
you
yeah.
take a swig of that, and I would assume pretty quickly realize that this is not some pasteurized milk you're getting.
And
What?
now, okay, this is Kotaku's biggest complaint. Now, Activision Blizzard answered and they said, well, there are more pumping locations that are properly equipped. They have quiet rooms that have PIN codes. They have fridges that have locks on them. Why aren't these people using those?
It's never enough, Brian. That's what the problem is.
Never be enough.
It's never
Because they
enough.
wanted a reason to complain, and so this is what they could get. The rest of the article I kind of read, and I was trying to find, but they were like women's rights and trans women's rights, but then they talk about breastfeeding, and I'm like, okay, really, really,
Well,
are they pumping milk? No. Why are you bringing them in this conversation? Kind of it's a stretch.
I have continued to say this, and it's the unfortunate reality, and it's the unfortunate reality of where we are right now with all of these conversations, Brian. But and I know it's one of the oldest adages in the book, but you give an inch, they take a mile, and that's exactly what happens with this stuff. A company like Activision Blizzard tries to do something out of good faith, in all likelihood, to add and to put forward some of these solutions or nice thing. By the way, they are not legally required to have breastfeeding stations. Let's be perfectly
My work
clear
doesn't
with that.
have any.
Yeah, they are they are absolutely, unequivocally, without a doubt, not required to have those. They do that, they have them, and it's not enough.
Yeah.
There's
And I just thought
something
that was
wrong
kind of
with it.
odd. Yep. They say that there's a better solution. We already have other things that are better that you could be using than those, and they're choosing not to use them. Well, why are you using the public refrigerator to store your breast milk? Why aren't you using the locked refrigerator that you have access to? Things like that.
I really, and this is why I am so adamant against a lot of this crap that we see. And it's not just in the gaming sphere, it's in corporate work environments everywhere. This is just a huge problem with work, and corporations everywhere. It never ends, Brian. It never ends. It's just the fact that they even have this available to you, you should be very happy with. And I'm not saying that if, there aren't little issues here and there that need to be fixed, like outlets aren't working. All right, that's a thing that can be resolved. But to make it as if the company, which by the way doesn't need to is not legally required to let you do this, and is absolutely adding to you a loss of what's the word I'm looking for? Loss of productivity during the day when you're doing this, which again they are not required to legally do, and you have the gall to bitch and complain about it and go to the Washington Post, it's a scam of an news organization, to complain about all of this stuff. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
The chairs in the private rooms would rock backwards and could not be locked in position to properly position oneself to pump.
I mean, do you have to lean back to do it? I
have no idea. Get over it. You have a private room. Just many people were sitting on the floor to pump their breast milk. How many people?
They wanted to lean back.
What are you talking? Hundreds of people in these rooms?
Yeah. Well, and that's a problem. I think that's a part of the issue that we've been running into is these companies, as far as PC Gamer, Kotaku, all these different places that write these articles, they have an agenda behind it. And
Brian, did you know that
want to hear truth.
These rooms had insufficient storage places. There were no locked cubbies for workers to keep their pumps safe. Yeah, because it's not the company's responsibility to keep your shit locked up and safe. Handle it yourself.
Why wouldn't you take it back to your workstation?
They don't want to do that,
desk?
Brian. Many workers had to lug them across the campus multiple times a day. Boo freaking who?
Yeah.
So then what's going to happen when there's what's going to happen when the company's got the locked cubbies, Brian, and somebody doesn't lock their stuff properly and somebody gets their expensive breast milk pump stolen? Then it's the company's fault because it was locked up. It's called liability. It is just amazing to me how ungrateful these individuals are and how willing they are to blow everything out of proportion. Brian, they're bitching and complaining that there's not room for them to plug in their laptop to work when they're pumping breast milk.
Yeah.
So maybe they're wanting you to just pump your breast milk and not be in there for 4 freaking hours. Get in, pump your breast milk, and get the hell out. Maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Don't be sitting there working while you're doing it all day.
Yeah. Oh, you wonder why there's not enough sufficient chairs? Because people are probably sitting in there for 2 hours. Because, I'm in the middle of something. It's unfathomable to me.
Yeah, so I just was looking for kind of what the reasoning behind it. And that was the biggest thing I could really find that they actually pointed out details of. And most of the article is about this. And I read it and it's just, okay, sure, that's inconvenient here and there. But, is it their responsibility to give you 5 outlets rather than 4 outlets? Like, what magic scenario are you going to create where you need to plug in so many things because you're setting up your little workstation in there and doing all these extra things that you're not supposed to be doing in there because that's not its role. It's for a specific thing, which has more than one plug. So you could plug that in and your laptop. But then when you turn it into your permanent desk, throughout the day, okay, you can't plug in your coffee warmer. You can't plug in all these other things. No, that's not what it's for. Go back to your desk.
Well, isn't the point of doesn't a laptop have batteries? I mean, I hate to.
But if you're in there 2 hours, you can't do it, I guess.
Well, isn't that a shame? I will just never be amazed how unsatisfied people are with things like this.
Well, we live in a place that's incredibly lax, and right now it's almost impossible to get fired. I was reading an article where they're talking about that because so many people are desperate to hire because nobody's choosing to work because why would you, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just people are not firing anybody for when you probably should. People aren't doing their jobs properly. They're being lazy. So now is the time where I think people take a lot of advantage, and it's kind of sad taking a lot of advantage of because that's excellent working conditions in my eyes. The fact that they're providing that to you,
oh my God,
is huge.
That's any women's advocacy groups or all these stupid left-wing groups that are always bitching and complaining about women's rights. I mean, the fact that this company is providing you a private area for you to go into while you're on the clock to pump breast milk and it's not enough for you is just spitting in the face of a company. It's goodwill that gets taken advantage of and hijacked. That's what it is.
But it's not quite to my standards.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then go find somewhere else. Go find somewhere else to work that will give you better standards for them to pay you to sit there and deal with crap that they're not responsible for. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So that's kind of the current state of Activision Blizzard. They do have a new game. Blizzard has a new game coming out. I don't know if you want to talk about that or show anything about it, but Arclight Rumble.
Yeah, it's
a Warcraft game.
Yeah. What? So it looks like is it a puzzle? Is it a puzzle game?
It's a mobile game. It's kind of I think it's a tower game. Pretty much a tower style game.
Oh, playback is. Huh.
There we go.
I don't know why the image is you're wacky. This isn't showing any gameplay. So,
well, they will later, but pretty much you're trying to get past towers and bosses and things in the game. It looks like it'll be fun. You got to pre-register with Battle.net. You can get it on Google Play. It says it's not quite out on the Apple Store, or I think you can reserve with Google Play. But that's going to be coming out. So there's a new game. We'll see if I've been waiting for Blizzard once they get purchased. I'm really curious. Are they going to change their subscription and redo anything with World of Warcraft, because I think
Well, if
that's
this
a
is
huge
any
world
sign
that if
of
they
it,
opened
no.
up to the Game Pass, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think I think we discussed this a couple of months ago. To me, it would be a new tier of Game Pass for, I don't know, add a Game Pass tier that also has the Warcraft subscription or whatever, however they wanted to do it. That would make sense.
because I think a lot of people, because that price is really high, and people would prefer not to pay $15 for one thing that they may or may not use all the time.
But they might pay $25
for a
that.
Game Pass, bundled
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Where they feel like they're getting more than just that. Because
Yeah.
I just don't like subscribing to it, because I want to go and play, once every 5 weeks, 6 weeks. It's not worth paying $15 a month for that.
Yeah.
For me.
So, well, and I think you can allow multiple, you could still have multiple tiers, right? You can still allow people to buy Warcraft and do their own subscription. Maybe they don't want the Game Pass stuff. I'm totally fine with that.
Bundle it with Ultimate. Why not bundle it with the Ultimate?
Yeah, because they'd have to raise the price of the Ultimate, or they'd lose their ass. Because you mentioned the World of Warcraft subscription is so expensive. It's $15 a month.
But is Microsoft going to be able to be a lot more efficient in running that with their data centers and everything to make
I'm
it
not
work
sure. I don't know
such an
that.
issue?
I think World of Warcraft is too big for them to incorporate. I think if I had to guess, Brian, that's going to.
You think they're going to keep it all separate?
I would assume so. I don't think it's even worth.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that that's going to be worth trying to centralize. I would assume.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where they go with it. I mean, they're releasing a mobile game, and their console game. They've been releasing expansions still, so we'll see if they eventually open up. And I just haven't. They don't talk very much. Used to be they would be a lot more vocal, but I think ever since all this stuff happened, they've just been releasing games and being very quiet, which is I'm fine. Sometimes companies need to do that. So, do you want to talk about? Okay, I've got a couple areas. We could talk about a little bit about SpaceX and some of the stuff going on there. We could talk about China. We could talk about Russia.
You lead, my friend.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about. We talked a bit about it. Started the show with Saudi Arabia, and China has been doing that for quite a bit of time, purchasing companies, but it's paying off because in 2021, the Chinese video game market will generate $45.5 billion in sales. It says. So that is a huge amount of money. They've been purchasing a lot of companies, purchasing a lot of things to be able to get that kind of constant stream of video game money, and it's working. They're definitely taking it over. I think they need to really realize if they appreciate having a lot of these freedoms, because, for instance, let's look at Saudi Arabia. They say that they don't restrict freedom of religion, but you're not allowed to spread your religion. You can only spread their religion. Well, is that freedom of religion if you can't talk about it? No. Well, what other areas, in a company like that, when they're taking over, like Saudi Arabia bought a 5% stake in Nintendo, if they can get a majority share, what are they going to limit? Because if it's a company that's truly owned by Saudi Arabia, it's against the law for them to do things in their country. Well, what are they going to restrict and start changing? You think they're going to be open to trans rights, gay rights, all of these things, the whole LGBTQ plus everything? You think they're going to like that? No. I get kind of shocked that more people don't kind of bring up a little bit of resistance to the idea of China or Saudi Arabia owning a large portion of your video game companies, because they are very restrictive. They did it with H1Z1. They do it with other games. So that's been my issue. I get nervous with the idea of them purchasing it. Also, Chinese tech giant NetEase launches their first gaming studio in the U.S., doing an international push. They also had one where one of the giant Chinese companies put out in Europe. They put a big headquarters. So now they're starting to put giant Chinese companies in the middle of our big cities and things like that. That's fine. But I'm still concerned about where this goes, the restriction of our freedoms, because I like the fact that GTA can put whatever they want in their video games, from what it seems. They've backed up from that a little bit lately.
I don't think it's I don't think it's you that just likes that. I think GTA and Rockstar like that as well because it's allowed them to make it's one of the most
Yeah.
successful video game franchises in history. Yeah, I mean, no question about it.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. As these keep growing, at what point do we need to say, "Hey, hold on," because it ends up in the end killing a lot of these companies. H1Z1, and I got their shirt on today. Uh, they we
Well,
called
you
it
don't
out
have their
early,
shirt on.
saying,
You've got a
"Well,
knockoff
we
H1Z1
our
shirt
own
on. Yeah,
not
yeah,
yeah,
our
this
own
is
shirts.
knockoff gear." But you look at H1Z1, and what happened with it, they turned around, started seeing money. We called it right at the time. They saw that China money. They started chasing it and killed their company because China started regulating them, realized that they can control them. They could release a competitor video game that would then take over their whole market and make it to where they weren't making any more money in China, because China will let you in to get people playing that category of game. But then when they produce the exact clone of that game, they then kick you out and everybody moves over to the one that they made and they start making the money. And these
Yeah.
companies haven't figured that out yet. I mean, it keeps happening. It's kind of sad. Also, TikTok. We talk about China and TikTok. Trump talked about that. They're trying to get into video games in a big way too. They got over 1 billion users of TikTok right now, and they figure if they can start throwing games in front of them, that's a huge market of people, and it's a way to influence. I think that's one of TikTok's biggest things that
Oh,
they try to do is influence people.
absolutely.
We had to sit down and talk with our kids because of things that happen over these type of services that end up having kids kill themselves because of stupid things they try to do that they're watching on there. One kid recently uh, hung themselves because they were trying to do a TikTok challenge.
Mm.
It's just things like this makes me nervous. But then you go around and see TikTok, what kind of games are they going to be pushing? This is another China company that's going to push you games exclusively that they agree with. And I think if people truly knew what these companies, their official stance where it was on a lot of these topics, they wouldn't be so open to letting them into their doors. These are very anti LGBTQ everything. They're very anti a lot of these things that they, for some reason, back. When they're
It's
pushing
big
for
on their
us to do it,
platform.
but they won't.
Yeah,
But they won't do it. They won't do it themselves. They push for us to do it, but they won't do it.
of
And there's
course.
there's a reason behind that. So yeah, TikTok, we'll see if they're one of the next ones trying to kind of like Netflix getting to the gaming service. A lot of these companies are trying to get in this little mobile gaming and mini gaming service. So we'll see where they go from there. But that's China. Because I've been seeing a lot of now Russia articles. And PC Gamer, for some reason, is just
Mo
going
Russia,
crazy on Russia.
Mo Russia, Mo
Yeah, everything's
Russia.
Russia. Russia. So they had an article where they're like, "Oh, Russia has to pick a slow Chinese x86 CPU to replace their Intel and AMD chips because Intel and AMD refuses to sell to them anymore." So they're talking about how now Russia has to buy these really slow x86 chips. Now these are for mobile and small form factor type of devices. They don't need a 64-bit processor a lot of times on these things. It's not so much the article; it's the point that it's just propaganda. Whether you agree with any of it, Russia, Ukraine, how much you're invested in all of that. A lot of this, they're just trying to change your mind about a country, which is fine. I mean, I have no ties to Russia. I could care less. I care about the people of Russia. Their rights being infringed upon. I care about that. I believe that everyone should have freedom. Uh, and not just the people that have hashtags right now. I believe that North Korea really deserves freedom. I think that we should be more upset with North Korea and what's happened to them since the 60s than we should about what's happening in Ukraine. Now, I don't think anybody should. I think they should fight as hard as they can to maintain their freedom, and whatever needs to happen there needs to happen. But I think it's odd how much they just now start targeting them for silly things. Um, they wrote Russia gets a taste of its own medicine as hackers target the country. So now they're saying, oh, it's good that these hackers are going after Russia, um, and they're claiming that Russia was the reason that we were hacked. They're going back to the Russia thing, trying to back that up again, which has already been disproved. In how many ways can you do that?
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. And that's all PC Gamer still. Um, And then, another one, or sorry, PC Magazine. And then PC Magazine again writes, Google is filing for bankruptcy in Russia. Well, that's because Russia fined them some obscene amount of money to get them out of there, right? They're fined 70.22 billion rubles. And now the
I don't
ruble's
even know
worth
what
a
that
lot
means.
because, well, the ruble was crushed. Remember how the ruble was
and
crushed when
their economy has been was yeah, but since they've invaded Ukraine, the idea was to
that's
destroy their
110.
economy.
Well, and the odd thing, that's not a huge amount of money. That was $110 million. I know they can afford that, but if they're wanting to get out of the company,
And we
just
just
file
gave
for bankruptcy and skip.
yeah.
So this is more.
It's
I mean,
pretty
I try to stay out of the whole Russia thing because I think they are people like to blame Russia for a lot. Um, I don't claim to know what's going on with them trying to invade Ukraine. I don't think anybody has been answered on why they're invading Ukraine specifically, other than they were going to join NATO, and they don't want that to happen.
Yeah, even that's
there's
kind of
just
proving to
all
be
these.
nonsense. But what I do
Yeah.
find interesting is a lot of these companies evacuating. I mean, you've seen like McDonald's, Starbucks. They've all decided
Yeah,
that they're
they've
leaving
left.
Russia. I guess, and I think that there's a very interesting thing to note here. While these companies will claim, "Oh, we're doing this for human rights," companies do this stuff for business, Brian. And maybe these markets like Russia that they have been expanding in over the past couple of decades, it's called the last 20 years or so. Yeah, mid to late 90s to now. It obviously hasn't returned the investment that they were looking for, because if it did, well, they'd still operate there. For example, all these companies still operating in China, even though, China's got all these terrible human rights issues. They don't care because they make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And as a business, that's fine. Your business goal should not be to virtue signal. It should be to make money. I know, scumbag capitalist over here, but, make money for your shareholders and pay your employees. I mean, that's kind of the goal.
Yep.
So it's just very suspicious that now everybody can evacuate this, and maybe this had nothing to do with, maybe this has got everything to do with the business over there.
Yeah. Now, we'll do one more thing. SpaceX, of course, Elon said that he was going to vote Republican next time, and then all of a sudden we have allegations. And someone said that they paid a flight attendant to cover up an accusation of sexual misconduct, and
a really low payout if that was the case.
Well, and this has happened over and over again, with different people that are in politics. And he said, "Hey," he answered. He said, "I don't have flight attendants on my private jets." So it kind of blew their story out. They didn't do the research to know that he doesn't actually have any flight attendants that he hires to do these flights. He just gets on his plane and goes there. They didn't research that. But you have companies where, that one was Business Insider writing this, and it's like a hit piece.
It's not like a hit piece. It is a hit piece.
Well, it is a hit piece. At what point are you going to have to actually back up? Because how many times have we seen unsubstantiated claims of things like this by one particular party to attack and try to shut the other side up?
Why are you doing
I'm
this?
sorry.
Because
we only got minutes.
Yeah. Well, Georgia. Election day is today in Georgia. Mm-hmm. For months, we heard about how the Georgia voting bill that the Republican General Assembly in Georgia passed through was going to be the reinstating of Jim Crow era voting laws. Early voting in Georgia was 3 times what it was in 2018. They're estimated to have the highest voter turnout that they've ever had in the state of Georgia for this primary election. Is anybody going to apologize for those absolutely bogus, fear-mongering, scare tactic campaigns?
Well,
the answer is no, Brian. There's no accountability is the problem, Brian. That's where this is. There's no accountability.
My worry. Where's that go? Because right now you have the news agencies lying through their teeth. Why are they doing it? First, it's a push of certain propaganda. What I think that I'm worried they're trying to do secretly is push it so far that they will get regulation on media, which means control and makes it more like the kind of utopia of controlling what people are allowed to think possible. And I'm really worried that the reason they're pushing this so hard is because they're trying to get the government to overreact and say, all right, we'll restrict freedom of speech. We'll start restricting news organizations. And that'll be the first steps towards freedom of speech being gone, which is their ultimate goal. Why a news organization would want freedom of speech gone, I have no clue, but that's where they're going. And they say it every day. When they tell you that you're not allowed to speak, that only one side's allowed to speak, that's them promoting restriction of freedom of speech when their job is speech. That is their whole job. That's what they do. And they're trying to restrict it. It's like they're self-sabotaging. It's crazy. Things like this, Insider, where they didn't even do any kind of research or, they put it as a fact. When they talk about it in their article, it's like they're talking about this happened, and it's just like, okay, well, but he doesn't have flight attendants. He doesn't have flight attendants. Okay, well, then prove that he has flight attendants, and then that would be that he's lying, and then you can go forward with there. But instead, you throw out an unsubstantiated thing. He puts out something that says, nope, here's proof that didn't happen. Oh, now on to the next thing. How many times has that happened in politics, in them trying to take down somebody? I'm worried that them doing this is not just so that they can try to persuade people, but what are we going to do in response? Do the thing that we claim that we don't want, restrict their freedom of being able to say something? It's a slippery slope. They're slippery slope. They're pushing us in a place that there's no win, because how do we shut them down? But the only way we shut them down is by doing the thing that we say we don't want. Right? How do we you can't regulate the press. They're supposed to regulate themselves, and they've quit.
Correct.
It's frustrating.
On that note, do we have anything else we need to get to tonight, Mr. Brian?
No, we can, there's all the rest of the stuff we can talk about at another time. One thing, an interesting fact from the Nintendo Entertainment System to the Switch, Nintendo has now sold 5.4 billion video games.
Who? So, Nintendo?
Nintendo. Yes.
Overall?
5.4 overall from their original Nintendo to now. Which is not that much if you look at how
I would
much
think that's
Sony...
not. Well, no, I guess 5.4 billion. How many people? How many people? How many people in the world? Okay, now there's 7.9 billion people, and that's people in total. So I guess that is. But you're talking about when did the NES come out? 86
or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like that, I mean, don't get me wrong. That is an incredibly high number, but I could have seen that being closer to 7 or 8 billion. You're talking about games you're talking about games like the original Legend of Zelda and Mario that have sold hundreds of millions of copies apiece.
Yep.
Interesting.
So because I looked and I saw Sony. I looked at their numbers. And it's just, of course, Microsoft, way bigger, but you got to look at all the times that they weren't really selling tons of games. They were selling a couple games on a lot of consoles.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole Wii system. There weren't that many games to play on Wii. They just sold a lot of Wiis.
Yeah,
so
precisely.
It wasn't a ton of actual sales. So, all right, but other than that, we're good. If you want to find me, you can get me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, Truth Social, and of course, at Boise Computer on Twitter. You check out my blog, biteoftech.com. And of course, our website, infectionpodcast.com. Go to the upper right-hand side, and we've got join our server on Discord. And if you go there, it's a free service, a web-based app, mobile app, a lot of ways that you can connect to that. Totally free if you want it to be. And you just click there, join our server. We've got politics, ARC servers, lots of stuff you can do. If you want to watch the video forms of the podcast, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. And the audio forms to the lower right, on whether you have an Apple device, an Android device, or even any kind of a desktop app. There's a lot of ways for you to listen. And if you are going to listen, I encourage you to go to the episode that you're listening to and follow along with the show notes, because we got links, articles, videos, everything that you would see. For instance, us displaying on the screen while we're doing the show, you have access to do and see that while you're listening to the show. So if you want to support us, we have the support option up top, or infectionpodcast.com/support. And I appreciate everybody who has supported us to this point. And hopefully a convention makes it our way to where we can actually go and hang out in person again.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed on that. It would be a lot of fun. Brian, thank you as always. Appreciate it. And we will see you next week.
See you later.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, as Brian mentioned, you can check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. If you want to check out some information about me, you can head on over to my websites, nickcraig.com or nickcraig.net. You can also give me a follow over on Twitter at Nicholas M. Craig. If you missed any portion of this show, maybe you want to read that ridiculous Kotaku article about Activision Blizzard, well, head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com, where you can find show notes, images, everything that you want. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We will see you next time.